Scenic Board track planning at Halton Warren OO9. Right, so welcome back to Halton Warren OO9. I'm Mark. As you saw in the last video, we have finally, after 3 or 4 months, got the helix finished and working. So now it's time to start planning what we're going to do with the rest of the side of this. Now I've had a basic idea in my mind. When I started building the railway, I had 2 scenic balls down this side. Not that I got as far as scenic in them, but the balls were laid out with a track on it. The station came up here and terminated, and then there were some sidings down on the other board, and then there were some more hidden sidings at the back. So the trains basically came out and it just went between these 2-3 areas. Obviously now I've developed the railway. It's got the branch line that runs off around the back, and the story is that the helix now takes it to the main town, where there's a rail transfer from the narrow gauge into the main line to take the product from the quarry to ship that on around the world. But I want to develop this area now, and I've, as I say, had a rough idea of what I want to do. It wouldn't have worked. It would have been quite restrictive. So I need now to plan out properly what I'm going to do. Now, one issue I've got is that helix has turned out to be maybe an inch, maybe slightly more higher than I originally planned for it to be. So if I just take a board and put some battening around it and have this as a baseboard, when I take it over there, I'm going to have to jack it up about 2 inches to make sure the trains can get clearance underneath it. That will make it about 3 inches higher than the rail that comes out from here. So that means, but by the time I get a kind of branch up to it, it's going to be quite steep, and I can't do that. So I've got to look at devising a track plan that I can transfer onto this board. Then once I've done that, I've got to work out how I can batten it without interfering with any points I've got on here, and also batten it so I've got kind of gaps or alleyways underneath it where it won't restrict the train going round the helix. So that should keep it down. So instead of a 3-inch rise, it's probably going to be 3/4 of an inch at the most. So that's a more manageable rise for getting trains in and out. Now this is, as I say, going to be split into 2. So this is going to be a station end, and then the other half, where the camera is now, is going to be the estate manager's yard. And I'll get onto that in just a second. The station is going to be fairly basic. I had put together a Wills kit, which is their country station. It's far too grand for this, and I upgraded it as well. I put on kind of canopies and stuff. It's going to be too big, too grand. So this is just going to be quite a small station with maybe a small goods shed on the end of it, and that's going to kind of sit here. I'll go into the track plan in a moment, but what I want to do at this end as well is have it so it's an open baseboard, so that the track will come through here, and either the scenery will come down to it, so it sits in the valley, or it will come down, flatten out for the station, then drop down again, so it's like on the edge of a hill. I want it to look like the railway's kind of running through the scenery, if you like. So that I'll touch on it, as I say, a bit later, very briefly, with the plans I've got for that. But the main thing is to get this area sorted out here. When I start putting this together, as I say, I had 2 baseboards to start with. The very simple track plan had a station up here, which was a terminus, hidden fiddle yard at the back, and then the estate manager's yard at the front, which was, well, I'll show you on the plans in a moment, but it's basically 3 or 4 sidings, and it wasn't going to do much. So I want to develop it more. My aim for that area has always been to kind of fulfill my interest in old Victorian architecture, railway architecture, industrial architecture. I love those brick buildings. They're sturdy, they're full of character, they've got nice detailing on the outside, and that's what I want to try and aim at. So as I say, it was a bit boring to work with to start with, and I want to develop that, so I'll show you on any rail the plans I've come up with, and might as well do that now. So at the moment we're showing both the baseboards for the scenic area, and this is 3 meters long and 600 millimeters wide. Now the actual baseboard could come back another 10 or 100 millimeters, but this is where the line comes up from the helix at the back of here. So this is the main line coming in off the helix. At the moment it's slightly out of line, but not to worry about that. So trains can come from there, or from Halton St Barnabas, or from Halton St Mary, come into this station area. Now the idea originally was to have 2 platforms, one either side, and then anything going off to this yard here, which is the estate manager's yard, would be brought in here, and either the train that brought it in could take it in, either by propelling it, or obviously if it was pulled in this way, then it could go, the engine could go round and then again push it or propel it back into these sidings. Not ideal. Trains and engines do get propelled if it's safe to do so. I know the modern methods is that you don't propel passenger stock with passengers in, but this would all be empty stock. So what we'll just do is bring this up to slightly larger, and then we can have a look more at what this was. So yes, one of the issues was that everything would have to be propelled in here. If the engine was in front, by the time it gets in one of these, you've got the engine locked in and can't get it out. So that was one issue. The other issue is it's not very exciting. Basically the engines would bring down wagons or coaches and put them in these sidings, and they just sit there, and then a bit later you take them out again. And these sidings were going to be this one down the bottom. This was going to be a permanent way siding with possibly a depot at the end. The next one would be to the locomotive workshop. So the workshop would be kind of in this area, so you've got a bit of stabling outside, maybe a service area with a water tower and coal. At the back maybe just an overrun, kind, I don't know what you call it, head shunt overrun, and maybe a derelict loco could be on there, or just some wheels or something like that. The middle one was going to be a basic siding, so anything that was waiting to go in the workshops, or anything the PWT were going to work on, could go in there and just sit there until it was worked on. And then these 2 last sidings here were going to have the wagon and coach carriage workshops as well. That is 2, so this one the wagons would be brought in, or the coaches, for quick work to be done, maintenance work, general work, odd touch of paint, stuff like that. And then the one at the back would be for more long-term projects, wagons that needed to be reboarded, or even possibly a coach that was in the process of being constructed. But as I say, that was a bit constricted. You put stuff in there and it was basically a storage area, and I wanted something a bit more exciting than that and a bit more operational than that. So I wondered how to do that, and I thought the best idea is to get a backstory for the estate manager's yard or depot, or whatever you'd like to call it. So that's what I did. Okay, backstory for the estate manager's yard. And I'll try and keep it short because I could whittle on for ages on this one. Right, so if we go back to the early days, then the estate's been around, say, for 300-400 years, okay, in the same family. Originally they would have had farms and villages around the area. The tenant farmers, the tenants in the village, would all be responsible for their own areas, the upkeep of their houses, and they would have paid in a rent into the estate. Along with the quarry that's on site, that would have put money into the estate as well. Now, everything that happens on the estate, whether it's agricultural produce or something from the quarry, would stay on the quarry because you can't get it off. You've got horse and wagon and you've got people, and to actually move some of this stuff off, you just can't do it. So you're stuck. You got quite a confined market. So we could move up a little while, and although it's still kind of confined, it's got to the point now where things have moved on business style wise, if you like. The lord of the manor decides he's no longer going to be responsible for running his own estate. He's going to appoint an estate manager. The estate manager will need somewhere to work, so he gets a small office. He is responsible for things like fencing, forestry, rivers, ditching, keeping up the roads, making sure that the tenants will pay their bills and everything like that. So he needs that little office, but he also needs a store because he's going to now start having a stock of materials he can use around the estate. Now, as soon as you start doing that and you start getting tools and stuff, you need people to maintain them and move them around. So you might need a blacksmith who's going to maintain your axes and saws and ploughs and anything like that. You're also going to need a wheelwright who will mend your wheels when you go over a rock and you smash your wooden wheel. He might also do a bit of carriage work and a bit of wagon work. These are horse-drawn carriages and horse-drawn wagons. So you've started to get a little nucleus of people that are going to help maintain and run the estate and keep it in good order. Now we move on a bit more, we come to the Industrial Revolution. So we can see that we can get the stone from the quarry down to the nearby town, which has got canal and a railway link to the rest of the world, if we actually put in a little narrow gauge railway. So that's fine, we'll do that. So once we do that, we need somewhere to maintain the locos and keep the wagons and stuff like that. So what we do is we'll build a little area in the quarry where we can maintain and keep our locos. Then we find out that the locals are jumping on the locos to get a lift around the estate. So we can make money out of that, so we're buying coaches, and we now have a train for the quarry and a train to move people around. Now if we're moving people around, we can move livestock around, we can move goods and services around as well. So we want engines and rolling stock for that as well. So now we're building up and we need to develop our estate manager's department to cope with all that. So we take that small area where he had his office and the blacksmiths and the carpentry shop, and we expand it. So now we are going to have somewhere where we can bring in the carriages at night, roll them into a workshop if they need repairing. We need a service area to coal and fuel up and water engines, steam engines. We need somewhere to maintain those. So we've got two buildings we need already. We're now talking about heavy plant as well. We got to the point where we're not talking about a man with a horse and a plough. We're talking about a man with a tractor or a man with a couple of steam plough engines with a massive plough that goes with them. So we need a mechanical engineering works for them to be maintained as well. So there's another building we need. We also look at that buildings are developing, so we might need a stonemason. We need somebody into carpentry that can make the roof trusses and floorboards and windows and doors on a larger scale than the villagers could on their own houses. We're also looking at more offices because now we've got an estate manager, we've got a railway manager, we might have a railway yard manager, we might have somebody who's in charge of finance. We've brought all these people in and expanding the services that we run on the estate, and they need paying. Also, we've got the rents coming in and other things, so we might need a finance office. We might need a surveyor's office. We might need a room where ladies can do needlework so that they can maintain the Lord's robes and tapestries and curtains from the big house. So it builds up, and this is why we're now looking at, in the 1920s, a more substantial estate manager's area. Okay, so here's version 2. Now, thinking about the backstory, I still don't think this is imaginative enough, or it really services the kind of operation that the estate manager's yard wanted to achieve for the estate as a whole. The engines now come in with their trains through this higher level. We've still got the same areas. We've got the carriage repair shops here, we've got a loco repair shop here, we've lost the siding but we've got another siding down the bottom here, and this is now the PW siding that might come round with a depot on the end, but to leave enough room for a head shunt there. So locos with their carriages or wagons that needed to be either serviced or repaired, or a disabled loco that needed to be repaired, would come in through here, would come down to the bottom, then it would back into this area here. The loco would disconnect, run round, reconnect, take the train back into this area, and then would come up and then back into whatever the appropriate siding was, and therefore the loco wouldn't get caught in the end of the siding. that's all well and good, but still it's not that exciting. This area here would be long enough to put some sort of workshop or goods shed in or something like that. So at least you could bring in goods for the area, put them in here, and then you could, I don't know, have arrivals there, push them in, come out, and then when they're offloaded, bring them back around this way, put them on the end, push the next one in, so on. So there would be a little bit of operation there, but it's still not really hitting my imagination, or I don't think it's going to fulfill what I actually want with this area. So we're going to version 3. Right, thinking back to the backstory, the original estate manager's yard would have been quite small, as pointed out with the buildings and the layout that I said earlier. So as the estates developed, there would be more and more need for more sophisticated workshops, bigger workshops, kind of fulfilling different bigger roles and more effective roles around the estate. What I wanted was an actual line, a railway line, to help supply those different workshops, and also to bring in general goods. So whether we're bringing in heavy machinery that needs repairing, like traction engines, or wood for the carpenter's shop, or general packaging, or anything like that, that will all be dealt with at the top here, which is close to the workshops and the buildings. So the train can come in, they're now coming in through the middle, it will pull into this area, it can offload there, or it can bring into the head shunt and put into this line here. But anything that's close to be able to offload into the various workshops could act as kind of arrivals area. So the train pulls in, and then it uncouples what it needs to, brings it into this shunt round, and then drops it off either to the goods shed, which will probably be here, mechanical engineering, left up here for the carpenter's workshop, or down here for the general workshops, offices, etc. Once these wagons are finished with, they can be brought back up here, put on the end, and then the next one's shunted into that area. So that's the goods and supplies for the workshop. These two lines here will continue to be the workshops for the coaches and carriages. These are now long enough that if I put the workshop at the end here, these sections of track here are actually big enough to put 2 coaches on. So this can be overnight storage. I might even put a canopy over the top of those, so it is like a carriage shed for the carriages to be stored under, the working carriages to be stored under until picked up in the morning. The next line is a general siding. We still need, I think, need a general siding where bits and pieces can be stored, ready for use, or ready to go into the workshops. But yeah, just a general thing. I might just store the PW setting now, I don't know yet, but that will just be a general siding. Now for the engine shed, that will come down here, engine shed, engine workshops. Again, it would be brought back a bit, so we've got an area here for storage, whether that's a tarpaulined old derelict locomotive, or something's been repaired on, or spares like wheels and stuff there. But then we can have the workshops here. In front there's enough space to stable a couple of locomotives as well. And then this head shunt here will also have the coal and the water to service the steam locomotives. My railway's built around the 1920s, late 1920s, 1928, something like that. I'm going to be a bit elastic with that at times because there's a couple of little diesel trains I like as well, so I might just have something here that looks like a diesel tank just to top those up as well. But as I said, we can stable a couple of locomotives in here, we can stable the not in use carriages here. So I've got a morning routine. In the morning the engines can fire up, go and top up with coal and water, come up here, collect a set of carriages, then go up to the station, collect passengers and go on their way. A bit later on the next one can come out, connect up to the carriages and take those out. So we've got a morning and evening routine that we can use this for, with the start and end of day procedures. We've got all our goods here, we've got a PW in here, we've got plenty of shunting to get on with. We can bring engines in here for the repairs. We can these buildings are going to have the roofs taken off, so I can do little scenes within the buildings, detail them out quite nicely. I'm quite happy with this. I think it's going to work. The next stage is to print this out, and I can print it out one to one and then actually stick them onto cardboard. I've been saving some massive cardboard boxes so I can put these in, cut them out, and then kind of get templates for them. Talking about printing out, normal thing, go onto file. If you go down onto print, what we've got here is obviously we've got the landscape and the portrait, put in how many we want. But the good button here is that here we've got suppress empty pages. So if you click that, it's only the pages with actual track on that will be printed. Anything that's blank won't be, so that saves your paper. And down here on the print scale, we just got to make sure that the ratio is 1 to 1, and then that will print it out full size. So these will actually, the tracks here will be 9mm between, or for me, because I'm 009, this will be correct gauge. So I can lay this down onto a board, stick it down onto a board, and I know this is the exact dimensions and that it will fit into the area I've got. So that's it. This is what I'm really pleased about. I think I've done enough interest there. As I say, I've got my start of day and end of day procedures. At the end of the day, the trains can bring their coaches back in. They can either do that by running around them at the station and then propelling them into these places, or they could be brought up here and then the engine run round and then bring them back and shunt them in. So there's a bit of interest there as well. Once the engines have put the carriages away for the night, they can come off down here, go up to the end here, have their blowouts, top up with coal and water ready for the next day, and then come back in and stable up for the night. I had a look at my plans for that end, which is the estate manager's yard, and why I'm doing it the way I am. Now, I don't know if there is a prototype or whether that's prototypical. My guess is that at some of these estate railways that were built, and there were a number of them around the country, and some other ones as well, like we've got Leighton Buzzard up the road where the rails were laid to transport sand around from the pits down to Leighton Buzzard so they could be transferred onto the British rail lines. Were there regulations and plans and procedures you had to follow, or was it more likely that the people who built these railways bought the stock in at the end of the war, the First World War, because that's where it came from, the track, the rolling stock and the engines were surplus military equipment now, so it's bought in, and unless they had ex-military people on their staff who had built these railways in France, then they would have made it up. They would have got the route, laid the track and run the engines across it without really knowing what they were supposed to do, whether there was any regulations or whatever. Anyway, so I'm not worried. I'm doing it my way. It's something I'm excited about, and I think it's going to work for me, and it's going to keep my interest. So as far as I'm concerned, that's as good as it gets. Now, I did say I would touch on the station area. The station will be here. As I've already said, it will be in a valley or it will be on a hillside, depending what works best. But there are a couple of things I'm still trying to sort out there. I think the easiest thing to do is we'll go back to any rail. I'll show you what the plan is I've got for it and just briefly go through what I'm not happy about, what I am happy about. So we'll take a look at that and I'll be back with you in a minute. Right, that leaves us with just the station area. So as I said earlier, this is the branch line off to Halton St Mary. This is the branch line off to Halton St Barnabas, and then this is the main line which goes off to the Fiddle Yard. This is Halton Warren Station, and there's two lines on there, but I'm not sure I actually want two sets of platforms. It's a very quiet railway in a way. In real life, a station like this would only be small. Trains would come in, pick up the passengers and go out. An hour or two later, another train would come, pick up the passengers and roll out again. Very, very rarely would you get a train coming in from both directions waiting to pick up people, I think. I don't know. It's something I've still got to get my head around. So I might just have a platform on this line, and then this would just be a passing loop, which would make a bit more sense to me, because you've got a goods train or a PW train can come in, wait there while the passenger train goes past it, and then that can go out again. The only thing I'm not really happy about is this point here. I prefer it up there, but this is kind of necessity. I need that run to come into the fiddle yard. Now, not the fiddle yard, the estate yard. Now, because of the height of the helix, my estate yard is going to be slightly higher. I think it's about 3/4 of an inch to an inch higher than this board. So this has got to climb up slightly. So it needs the long run. I would prefer this point to be here and then come round into, but I think that's going to be too tight. And the reason why I prefer it there is that trains can come up from this way, go on there and come straight round and go into the estate manager's yard. Trains coming the other way would be able to come in here, hold there, and then the engine could run round, pick it up the train again and come out. The way this is, anything coming in's got to kind of drop the train off here, run round, pick it up, come out the area and then back in and then come round. So you're kind of blocking this line when you shouldn't really do that, or shouldn't really need to do that. So it would make more sense for that to come up here. But when I'm actually laying this track, I'm going to play with that, see how it works. But I think I'm going to end up with that point there. As I say, I'm not happy, but I think necessity needs that means that will need to be there. We'll see how it goes. Right, I think that winds it up. I've told you what the plans are from here. I've got a bit of tweaking to do, especially with this end, but as I said on the clip, the AnyRail clip, I think some of it will have to be kind of grow as I install it. So we'll just see how things are going to go. That's the next thing to do. I've got to build the baseboards, lay the track, get it all wired up. Once they are wired up and done this side, I can make sure it all works with my trusty NCE. I've got a small area over there that's almost tracked up, but it still needs a bit of wiring to be done on it. Once that's finished as well, everything can be wired into the DigiKeys equipment that's on the pull-out drawer down here. Then I can see if I can get it working with iTrain. I've got to learn how to use iTrain yet. In the meantime though, as I say, I've got the NCE so I can actually run trains, make sure it all works. As long as the track's down, it's all wired in, it works, I can start on the Scenics, which I am really excited about because that's my main interest. So, as I say, I'm going to stop waffling along and call it a day there. So, I hope you found it interesting. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye for now.